I worked as a Walmart cashier for a little over a year. I quit in August of 2015 when I went away to college. As a cashier, you see a lot of people in a day, especially at Walmart. And after a while, you don't even see people's faces when you look at them, but there are some people that you see so often you start to recognize and sometimes learn their names. There was this one guy, always in the same Green Bay Packers hoodie and Chicago Cubs baseball cap, that would often seek out my line no matter how long it was, just so he could stare at me and rarely say a word. Whenever he did say anything to me, he would always lean across the register to get closer to my face. He always gave me a really bad vibe, but when I asked other cashiers about him, they said that he had never been weird around them. One of the girls even said he was a close family friend. After that, I dropped the issue. One night after I'd been there for about a year, I was working a 2 to 11 shift. Those shifts were always the worst because you'd be there for 3, sometimes 4 front-end managers, but also because it takes the chunk out of your day when you were actually going to do anything. So I'm down on the self-checkout. It's about 10:15, so I'm counting the minutes until I can shut it down at 10 to 11. The creepy guy comes in the front door and makes a beeline for me at the self-check podium. When I see him come in, I instantly get nervous. He walks up and says, "Can I still buy a cell phone card and electronics?" I told him I only worked as a cashier on the front end, so I didn't know anything about electronics, but he could go back and check. He seemed peeved by this answer, but he walked away without another word. About 10 minutes later, he comes up with a prepaid phone card and said there's no one at the register in electronics, so I activate his card and hand it to him, telling him to have a good night, but he pushes the card back at me without saying a word, and I say, "Is something wrong?" To which he replies, "These minutes aren't on my phone yet, are they?" I was confused by this statement because, of course, they weren't. He had just bought the card. I shook my head, and he waved the card in front of my face. "Why the fuck are you just standing there? Reactivate my phone." When he talked, he was so close I could smell his breath, and I was a little scared. I wanted to put in a call to my manager so that someone could come down and help me. This is where I should probably mention that I'm about 5'3", and he is closer to probably 6'5", and very stocky, so he was towering over me, and the thought that he could easily overpower me crossed my mind, but I get so nervous whenever men yell or cuss at me because my dad was never the type to yell or cuss. I took the card out of his hand and he slammed his cell phone on the scanner. I was trying not to let him know I was nervous, but I was terrified. I knew I had never put minutes on a prepaid phone before, but I don't dare tell him that in fear of what he might do. So I read the directions, pick up his phone, dial the number, and as I'm putting in the card number, his phone runs out of minutes. I try to call back and get an error message. I'm at a loss. I meekly hand him his phone back and say, "I'm sorry, something went wrong. I don't know what is happening." As soon as I say it, he takes his phone, opens it up, tries to dial someone, and when it doesn't work, he looks at me with furious eyes. He screams, "What the fuck did you do to my phone? What the fuck?" His voice is echoing in the store, and unfortunately we haven't gotten the end of second shift rush yet, so there is no one around. He closes his phone and opens it again, trying to make another call, but when it doesn't work, he throws the phone down on the scanner again. He says, "I don't know what you did to my phone, but you better fucking fix it." But this comes much more quietly, practically a whisper. At this point, I'm worried he's going to put his hands on me, and I don't know what to do. I put in a call for a manager from my register, and then I say, "I've called someone that might be able to help, but we're at shift change right now, so it might be faster for you to take it to the customer service desk." He picks up his phone off the podium, still mumbling under his breath that I fucked up his phone, and I'm hoping I can get out of there before he comes back, or at least have someone else down at the self-check with me. Another 15 minutes go by, and I don't see him again. As I'm picking up items that people left by the registers, getting ready to shut them down for the night, he comes back and stands by the podium. He still looks completely pissed off, and my stomach has sank. He made that finger motion that means come here without saying anything, and for some reason that makes me even more nervous. When I'm standing in front of him, he leans so close to my face that I think he's about to kiss me or bite me or God knows what. I try to take a step back, but he takes a step forward when I do. A creepy grin comes across his face as he says, "The girl up there fixed it. Simple fix. But next time, I expect you to know what to do. Understand?" I nod because I don't think I can speak. He gets impossibly closer before saying, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I never should have done that, especially to a pretty girl like you." When he adds the last part, he lightly uses his fingertips to brush my bangs to the side. I took a step back and he said, "Let me make it up to you. Let me buy you a drink." I shake my head. I say, "No thank you, I'm only 19. He says, "So we'll get a couple of beers and go back to my place." Again, I shake my head. "No, it's really okay. I'm not much of a drinker. I have an early morning tomorrow." He looks displeased with this answer and says, "Tell you what, I'll wait over here by the door just in case you change your mind." I smile at him weakly and tell him to have a good night. When I see him walk through the security, I quickly shut down the registers and sign out of mine. Then I run over to find a manager to tell about the whole thing. The third shift manager that I tell looks at me like I'm lying, and when I'm finished says, "I know Todd. He wouldn't hurt a fly. He doesn't have it in him. You're probably just being dramatic." She then turns to another older cashier behind her, shakes her head and mumbles, "Teenagers." I ask if I can have someone to walk me to my car, and they tell me that management is in a meeting and the security guy went home already. So I clocked out and went to the bathroom. I waited in the bathroom for about 10 minutes before coming out and attempting to go to my car. When I walked around the corner through the security things, he wasn't sitting on the bench right there like I had been expecting. I relaxed a little before I realized he was standing just outside the door, far enough away to keep it from closing, smoking a cigarette. He has his back turned toward the door. Luckily, I never went out the front doors. I always went to the corridor and not the side door. I quietly closed the door behind me so maybe I wouldn't catch his attention. I rushed to my car, which was fortunately very close to the building. As I'm quick walking to my car, I hear him shout, "Hey, why are you avoiding me? Come here." At this point, I take off into a full-on sprint, which is not easy because I'm wearing Sperry's, so it's like running in clogs. I get to my car, get in, lock my doors as I'm starting it, and don't even bother with my seatbelt. By that point, he had made it almost all the way to my car and was still yelling, telling me he just wanted to talk. I took off as fast as I could and took the longest way home with the most turns and twists that I could. When I got home, I told my dad about the experience and he was so angry that no one had answered my calls or believed me. He called the store manager the next day and complained. I was never contacted about his complaint, but from that night on, whenever I saw that guy, I would run to the bathroom, or if I couldn't get away, I would put out my lane closed sign and turn off my light so he couldn't get in my line. And you always hear people talking about the people of Walmart as being trashy, but they never tell you about the select few that are scary as hell. This happened to me earlier this year. It was around midnight and I was shopping around Walmart. I casually walked to the register to pay, and I was the third person in line. The first person had a full cart, and after the cashier finished ringing them up, the cashier had to change the cash drawer like they do every time it's at midnight. So I'm just standing there behind my cart when a man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, gets in the line behind me. He slowly creeps closer and closer to me, and soon enough his body is touching my own, and I get really nervous, and I have an idea to get gum, which meant I had to take a few steps out of line. So I pretend to look at the gum, and I look at my cart, and the man has his hands on my cart. I politely say, "Excuse me, can you move?" And he moves back a little bit, but it wasn't enough for me to get behind my cart, so I just stand next to my cart because he was violating my personal space. He starts to talk to me, but I ignore him and act like I don't know he's speaking to me. He taps my shoulder, then says, "I like your hair." and I awkwardly say, "Thanks." Now the cashier, who was a female, is just watching us talk while she's ringing me up, and then the guy asks me, "Do you like guys with green eyes?" I didn't hear him, so I said, "What?" And he repeats his question, "Do you like guys with green eyes?" And he takes off his cap and winks at me. I didn't answer his question, but instead gave him a look of "leave me alone," and I turned around to look at the cashier, and she can see that I'm feeling uneasy. The guy then talks about me and him and about going out. All I could say was, "Okay, whatever." I pay for my things, and as I'm walking out the door, the guy yells at me, "Bye, I miss you already. Maybe I'll see you soon, at a fancy restaurant or something." And he has a creepy face. It freaked me out so much my heart started racing even more, and once I'm out of his sight, I run like hell, because I know he will be out soon enough because he only had about 3 things. I get to my car and throw my things in my vehicle and hide in my car for a little bit because I didn't want him to see me or my vehicle. And I never thought I would run away from some random person, but this guy genuinely freaked me out.